welcome to this Friday edition, in fact, of the World Report. I'm Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Chinese leader Xi Jinping says China is not afraid in the first public comments on escalating trade war with Washington. On the other hand, Beijing raises additional tariffs on US goods to 125% from 84%. My colleague Vishal Vivek, in fact, gets you the latest on this developing story.
Xi Jinping waited for a while to give this statement. He was weighing in all his options. There was a lot of meetings going on during which China had decided to go on with some retaliatory tariffs of 84%. That happened about 2 days ago. And Xi Jinping would have weighed all these options and then finally made these comments. So he made these comments while he was meeting the Spanish Prime Minister who is on a state visit to Beijing. So it's interesting to see why he waited for about 3-4 days to make these comments. There have been some reports in the US that say that Trump is waiting for a call from Xi Jinping to resolve the matter, and Trump himself has said that he is expecting a very good deal with the Chinese authorities, and he has branded Xi Jinping as a very smart man. So he does expect a call from Xi Jinping, but this is a very defiant tone from the Beijing side, and the fact that he said that China is not afraid of taking measures and it's quite capable of handling its own affairs. So it will be interesting to see now what Trump says, because as I mentioned, the last few days Trump had been saying that even though he had been very critical of Chinese affairs, but he at the same time had been praising Xi Jinping.
More than 16 years after the dastardly 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, his sinister game is finally up. That's right, Tahawwur Rana, one of the key conspirators, was finally extradited to India from the US to face trial. A Delhi court has sent the Mumbai terror attack accused to 18 days NIA custody hours after he was extradited successfully from the US. My colleague Radhika Iyer gets you the latest on this story.
Tahawwur Rana, the key conspirator in the 26/11 case, has finally been extradited to India. This is a big win for Indian agencies. He is under NIA custody and will be interrogated for the next few weeks to understand the larger conspiracy behind 26/11 attacks and the role of Tahawwur Rana and who he was in touch with, the role of Pakistan, ISI as well as Pakistan Army, something that will be revealed as Tahawwur Rana gets interrogated. Remember, his name was there in multiple charge sheets filed by the agencies here. His name was also taken by David Headley, one of the other conspirators in the attacks case. During his deposition, as per David Headley, it was Tahawwur Rana who had helped David Headley set up base in Mumbai, helped him conduct recce's. There was logistical assistance provided to him, and it was Tahawwur Rana who played as an important intermediary between LET operatives and David Headley. So Rana's role is very, very crucial. He played an important link there, and he is the key plotter in the 26/11 attack case. And this also comes as a huge relief for victims and survivors of 26/11. They've been waiting for justice, swift justice. We know for a fact that Ajmal Kasab is the lone terrorist who was in fact caught and later given capital punishment. He was hanged to death. But besides that, none of the key conspirators were in custody or were caught by the Indian agencies as far as 26/11 attacks are concerned. So Tahawwur Rana is the high-profile criminal, the conspirator who has been caught for the first time by the Indian agency. So it is important, and I am standing outside Taj. This is, of course, the landmark destination. This is, of course, the place where those attacks happened. This is the epicenter of the attacks. Multiple destinations and locations were attacked by 10 terrorists on that fateful day of 26/11.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said that India is preparing for a high degree of urgency with regards to the United States, a country which he said has fundamentally changed its approach to engaging with the world and moving on, and it has consequences across every domain. We are speaking at the Carnegie Global Summit. Mr. Jaishankar said that India's trade deals are very challenging, in fact, as the US is very ambitious and the global landscape is very much different than what it was only a year ago. US stocks tumbled on Thursday as euphoria over President Donald Trump's 90-day tariff pause faded amid continued uncertainty and his escalating trade war with China. The S&P 500 fell 3.5%, and the dollar had its worst day since 2022, in more than 3 years, in fact. This as the White House said tariffs on Beijing now total 145%. Now, new data shows that inflation eased in March wasn't enough to impress investors who are sobering up and realizing, in fact, that the US-China food fight will probably get worse before it gets any better. Now, this is according to some analysts. The coast is not all clear. Meanwhile, some traders are arguing. Some major Asian financial markets, on the other hand, have opened lower. In fact, after Wall Street stocks resumed their slide. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has said US President Trump's 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs marks a quote-unquote welcome reprieve for the global economy. A Russian-American woman freed by Moscow arrived back in the US late Thursday as a part of a prisoner swap completed as the two countries aim to repair ties. Now, a plane carrying Xenia Carolina landed around 11 p.m. Eastern District Time at Joint Base Andrews, where she was greeted by her fiancé. Now, Carolina was released earlier in the day with exchange for Russian-German men who had been jailed in the US on smuggling charges. Carolina was arrested in the Ural Mountain city in February 2024 and convicted thereon of treason on charges of stemming from a donation of about $52 to a charity. Yes, $52 to a charity aiding Ukraine. Meanwhile, US authorities have called the case absolutely ludicrous. Russia said on Thursday that its forces had gained control of a settlement in Ukraine, while Ukraine reported on the same day that it had repelled multiple Russian attacks. In its daily briefing on Thursday, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Russian military in fact targeted several military airports, missile and artillery depots in Ukraine, shooting down 200 Ukrainian drones. Now, the ministry also stated that Moscow's forces had gained control of the settlement of Zuravska, in fact, in the Sumy Oblast area of Ukraine. On the same day, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that there were 149 clashes, in fact, in frontline areas over the past 24 hours alone. Australia has declined China's proposal to form an alliance against the United States tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump's administration. Now, the decision comes as Washington escalates its trade war with Beijing, imposing a 10% import tax on Australian goods and significantly higher tariffs on Chinese products, 145% now. China's ambassador to Australia suggested that the joint resistance is the only way, that's right, the only way to counter America's hegemonic and bullying behavior. However, American Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stated that his country will prioritize its national interests, speak for ourselves, he said, and not align with Beijing's stance. The UK is considering deploying troops to Ukraine for 5 years under plans being currently discussed by allies. Now, this is as per a report by The Telegraph. Military chiefs want the deployment to help train and reconstitute the Ukrainian army, this to prevent Vladimir Putin from mounting another invasion. Now, a scheme for phased withdrawal was raised in the discussions being led by the UK and France over a coalition of the willing to, in fact, uphold any post-conflict peace agreement. China's Atomic Energy Authority, or the CAEA, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, signed two key agreements on Wednesday in Beijing. Now, this marks a new chapter in nuclear cooperation. Under the agreements, China and the IAEA will enhance joint efforts in critical areas. Now, these include nuclear security, agriculture, healthcare, environment, and even basic nuclear scientific research. Additionally, China will leverage its nuclear research institutes and universities to, in fact, train professionals for the global south, bolstering global governance and talent exchange in the nuclear field. Now, the signing ceremony was attended by officials from the China Atomic Energy Authority and a delegation, in fact, led by Rafael Mariano Grossi. He's the Director General of the IAEA. Listen in.
China and the International Atomic Energy Agency have signed two major cooperation documents. The first document is the Country Program Framework, which serves as a strategic guide for joint projects between China and the IAEA, covering 7 key areas, including nuclear and radiation safety and security, agriculture, and human health. The second agreement is on education and training in the safe and peaceful use of nuclear technology, which aims to boost talent development.
Now, London, once a global magnet, in fact, for the wealthy, witnessed a mass exodus of millionaires in 2024. Over 11,000 millionaires left the British capital between January and December, according to a new report by Henley & Partners. Millionaires are fleeing London not by handfuls or dozens, but by the thousands now. And most of them settled either in Asia or America. Why is this significant? Though this has been happening for a few years now, what is worrisome rather is the frequency and the scale of exits have risen exponentially. Now, data collected annually by wealth advisory firms suggests that some of the more prominent reasons behind the exodus are ever-increasing taxes, failure to fully recover from the 2008 financial crisis, and, of course, Brexit, Britain's decision to separate itself from the rest of Europe. Agustin Escobar, a top Spanish executive at technology company Siemens, was reportedly among 6 people killed in a helicopter crash on Thursday. His wife, Merce Camprubi Montal, and their 3 children aged 4, 5 and 11 also reportedly died when their chopper crashed into the Hudson River. The Barcelona-based family was reportedly on a sightseeing trip in New York City. The doomed chopper was owned and operated by New York Helicopter, a tour company in the Big Apple that touts itself providing safety and, in fact, comfort to its customers. Meanwhile, Mayor Eric Adams has... This is the reaction, in fact, from the New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Approximately 3:17 this afternoon, we began receiving multiple calls for a helicopter that crashed in the water. These calls generated the response of many agencies, as Deputy Mayor Daughtry stated, including FDNY, NYPD, the Port Authority, and our Jersey partners, the police officers in Jersey as well, and the Coast Guard. 3 adults and 3 children were on board a Bell 206 helicopter that had left from the downtown Skyport just about 3 p.m. The pilot and the family visited from Spain, what our preliminary information has at this time.
The number of dead in a roof collapse at an iconic nightclub in the Dominican Republic has surged to at least 218, in fact, on Thursday, an official said. Juan Manuel Mendez, director of the Center of Emergency Operations, has said crews at the scene are still looking, in fact, for victims and potential survivors, although no one has been found alive since Tuesday afternoon. The legendary Jet Set Club was packed with musicians, professional athletes, and even government officials when the dust began falling from the ceiling and into people's drinks early Tuesday. Minutes later, of course, the roof collapsed, killing hundreds. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Thursday that the country will hold direct talks with Iran on Saturday to discuss Tehran's nuclear program. Now, the talks between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and a senior Iranian leader are scheduled for Saturday in Oman. Staying with West Asia, 10 Palestinians detained from Gaza by Israeli troops were freed and in fact returned to the territory on Thursday, saying they had suffered constant abuse while being imprisoned. On the other side, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denounced about 1,000 current and retired Israeli Air Force reservists who signed a letter, in fact, calling for the end to the war in Gaza, referring to them as marginal and extremists, while expressing support for the serving pilot's dismissal. In a statement posted on social media platform X, in fact, on Thursday, Netanyahu's office said that the Prime Minister backs the decision of the Defense Minister and the Israeli military chief of staff to dismiss those who signed this letter. The document, which ignited a political uproar in Israel, urged all Israeli citizens to in fact demand an end to the war, warning that the bombardment of Gaza puts Israeli captives held in the enclave at risk. The International Court of Justice has begun hearings into Sudan's allegations that the UAE violated genocide convention by supporting paramilitary forces accused of atrocities in Darfur. At the opening session in The Hague on Thursday, Sudan urged the United Nations top court to impose emergency orders, also known as provisional measures, to stop the UAE from backing the Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF as they are called. It's a paramilitary group that Sudan says is carrying out systematic killings of an ethnic group. Listen in to the UAE reaction on the allegations.
So when the applicant suggested this morning that it had no choice but to file this case, that is just not true. The applicant rushes to this podium in The Hague, but for 2 years, it has left its seat at the negotiation table empty. Mr. President, against this context, the idea that the UAE is somehow the driver of this reprehensible conflict in Sudan could not be further from the truth. This case is the most recent iteration of the applicant's misuse of our international institutions as a stage from which to attack the UAE. At every occasion, including here today, the applicant has leveled allegations that are at best misleading and at worst, pure fabrications.
In a polarized political landscape, Ecuadorian voters will choose Sunday between an incumbent young millionaire and a leftist lawyer, in fact, to lead the South American country for the next 4 years. President Daniel Noboa and leftist challenger Luisa Gonzalez will face off in a presidential runoff as Ecuadorian voters once again try to find a solution to the extortions, killings, kidnappings, and other crimes that have accompanied them, or rather plagued the country, emerged from the pandemic. Now, both Noboa and Gonzalez advanced to the runoff after being the top vote getters in February's first round election, while Noboa obtained 44.17% of support, while Gonzalez managed to garner 44%. Sunday's vote will be a repeat of the October 2023 snap elections that earned Noboa a 16-month presidency. Here's more.
Ecuador has always been insecure, but stable in a volatile continent. But now it is dealing with becoming a hub for the drugs trade and grappling with powerful prison mafias. Geography plays a part here. Ecuador is bordered by the two giants of cocaine production, Colombia and Peru. Guayaquil, the country's port city, has become a point for drugs to move from the country to Europe.
Well, Prada has actually taken over or bought its competitor Versace. Now, this move comes as both the firms were competing, and now the House of Versace will be a sub-brand, in fact, of its most versatile or peaked competitor, Prada. And having defined a slowdown, in fact, Prada in the luxury demand, while Versace has been operating at a loss in the last few quarters. Now, the merger, interestingly, also strengthens Italy's hand in the luxury fashion industry led by French conglomerates, the biggest, of course, being Louis Vuitton. 1 hour after announcing they would buy Versace, Prada's CEO warned analysts not to expect a miracle overnight, even as they expressed excitement about the acquisition. Michelle Obama dismissed rumors that she and former US President Barack Obama are headed towards a divorce. While speaking on the Work in Progress podcast, the former First Lady discussed having the freedom to pursue and in fact decline different opportunities since leaving the White House. Michelle said whenever she makes a choice for herself, people are quick to assume her marriage is but over. And it's time to slip into a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching the World Report and business news now. Alphabet's Google on Thursday reportedly laid off hundreds of employees in its platforms and device unit, which works on Android software Pixel phones and the Chrome browser as well. According to reports, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered the termination of IT services contracts totally valued at a whopping $5.1 billion with companies such as Accenture and Deloitte. Now, the pacts represent non-essential spending on third-party consultants for services Pentagon employees can perform. Hegseth said in the April 10th memo released by the Pentagon. A new analysis by the Center for Automotive Research has found that US President Donald Trump's 25% auto tariffs imposed in early April will increase costs by about $108 billion for automakers in US only this year in 2025. Now, the study that was released by Ann Arbor, a Michigan-based organization, found Detroit automakers Ford Motors, General Motors, and Stellantis, maker of Jeeps and Ram trucks, especially will see increased cost of $42 billion. The study further found that Detroit 3 could see tariffs of nearly $5,000 for the parts, in fact, they import on average for each car produced in the US, and about $8,600 on average for each car they in fact import. In the world of sports, Justin Rose used a red-hot putter to grab a 3-shot lead over a trio of players that including defending Masters champion Scottie Scheffler on Thursday at the Augusta National, where Grand Slam-seeking Rory McIlroy ran into trouble late. Now, Rose, twice a runner-up at the year's first major, needed just 22 putts en route to a 7-under par 65 that in fact equaled the Englishman's best start ever to a Masters. IPL bigwigs Chennai Super Kings or the CSK and Kolkata Knight Riders or KKR would be looking to return to winning ways when they clash at the M.A. Chidambaram Stadium in Chennai later on Friday. Now, CSK have lost their last 4 matches, the most recent one against Punjab Kings by 18 runs. On the other hand, KKR lost their last match against Lucknow Super Giants by a mere 4 runs. The world of entertainment, a jury on Thursday found that rapper Soulja Boy was in fact liable for sexually assaulting and physically and emotionally abusing a former assistant, awarding the woman more than $4 million in damages. Now, the decision from the Los Angeles County jurors came after a 3-week trial in Santa Monica, California. The 34-year-old rapper Soulja Boy, whose legal name is DeAndre Cortez, was found liable for assault, sexual battery, and intentional infliction of emotional duress or distress, as it's called. Jurors did not find him liable for false imprisonment and other allegations that were levied against him. They, however, found the woman should get about $4 million in compensatory damages and an additional $250,000 in punitive damages. Actress Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried are teasing their adaptation of The Housemaid. The two co-stars in the psychological thriller, which also stars Brandon Steckner from 1923 and was directed by Paul Feig. It's adapted, in fact, from a popular novel series by Frida McFadden and is all set to hit theaters across the US on the 25th of December. Here's more.
I think the mystery came natural.
It was just there. we kind of just found it.
I also think it's, if you can enjoy yourselves between takes and understand exactly what it is, like the story that we're trying to tell, which we did,
you can have fun.
Yeah.
And you feel comfortable and you can kind of like explore different crazy places.
And there were so many moments. We had just it was like a free-for-all at points, especially when the three of us were in a scene together, because each one of us wants something different, and it is a different character.
Football star, rather legend, Cristiano Ronaldo creates movie studio with filmmaker Matthew Vaughn. Yes, that's correct. Cristiano Ronaldo and British film director Matthew Vaughn have started an independent film studio in what will be the Portuguese football star's first foray into movie-making business. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the World Report. I'll see you Monday. Meantime, have a wonderful weekend and take care.